The knock came at midnight. 3 thunderous pounds that shattered the silence of the worst storm Texas had seen in decades. I opened the door expecting a neighbor. Instead, I found my billionaire CEO boss, soaked to the bone, trembling with her 8-year-old son in the doorway of my falling-apart simple home. The woman who could fire me with a phone call was now begging me for shelter. What happened next destroyed everything I thought I knew about money, power, and the impossible distance between 2 different worlds. I'm David Martinez, 34 years old, single father to 7-year-old Lily, earning $12 an hour assembling circuit boards at Carter Industries. That Tuesday night in March, I'd just gotten home from my graveyard shift when the storm hit Cedar Falls like God's own wrecking ball. The rain was hammering my roof like machine gun fire, and the wind was screaming through the streets like something alive and furious. My daughter Lily was huddled under her Disney princess blanket, clutching Mr. Hopscotch, the stuffed rabbit that had been her security blanket ever since her mother Sarah walked out on us 3 years ago. Sarah decided that being married to a factory worker wasn't Instagram-worthy enough for her dreams of becoming an influencer in Dallas. She left while Lily was at school and I was at work, taking nothing but her clothes and a note saying she needed to find herself. The thunder was shaking our 100-year-old house to its foundation. Lightning illuminated our modest living room, casting shadows across family photos that told the story of a man trying to raise his daughter alone on a salary that barely covered the basics. Photos of Lily's first day of school, her 6th birthday party that I threw by myself, Christmas morning where I'd worked double shifts for 2 months to afford the bike she'd been begging for. "Daddy, I'm scared," Lily whispered, her big brown eyes looking up at me. "The thunder sounds like monsters." I knelt down beside her on our second-hand couch. "It's just a storm, princess," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady even though I was genuinely worried about whether our old house could survive much more of this assault. Privately, I was calculating how much money I had in my checking account for emergency repairs. Spoiler alert, it wasn't much. I was living in that constant state of financial anxiety where every unexpected expense feels like a potential catastrophe. The roof had been leaking since last winter, the heating system was held together with duct tape, and I'd been putting off fixing the front steps because lumber prices had skyrocketed. As I carried hot chocolate back to Lily, another tremendous crack of thunder shook the house so violently that every window rattled. That's when I heard it, the loudest, most urgent knocking I'd experienced in my entire life. Not the polite knock of a neighbor, but the desperate pounding of someone fighting for their life. For a moment, I thought I might be imagining it. Who could possibly be out in weather like this? The sound came again, even more frantic, and I could hear pure desperation in that knocking. The kind of sound that says someone's world is falling apart and they need help right now. I kissed Lily's forehead and told her to stay put, then grabbed my heavy work jacket. My heart was pounding as I made my way to the front door. When I finally unlocked the deadbolt and pulled it open, the wind nearly ripped it from my hands. Standing in my doorway, completely drenched and shivering uncontrollably, was a woman holding the hand of a little boy. But this wasn't just any woman seeking shelter. This was Emily Carter, the CEO of Carter Industries, the company where I'd been working for 5 years. The woman whose face I'd seen in business magazines, always perfectly composed and radiating authority. Except the woman on my doorstep looked nothing like those polished photos. Her expensive coat was plastered to her body, water streaming from her hair. Her face was pale with exhaustion, her makeup completely washed away. She was shaking so hard she could barely speak. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she began, her voice trembling, but my car broke down about a mile down Highway 52. "My son and we'd been walking in this storm for over an hour, and I saw your lights. Her voice trailed off as she looked at me with the kind of desperation that only a parent feels when their child is in danger. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. This was Emily Carter, the woman who made more money in a month than I made in 3 years, standing on my doorstep looking lost and desperate and completely human. The little boy beside her, who I would later learn was named Jacob, was clinging to her hand, his eyes wide with terror. Without thinking, I stepped aside and gestured them into my living room. "Come in, quickly," I said. "You're both freezing to death out there." The contrast was surreal. Here was someone who lived in a world of luxury, now standing in my living room furnished with garage sale finds. My coffee table was an old trunk from a thrift store, my television was 10 years old, and the family photos were in dollar store frames. But none of that seemed to matter to Emily. She was just a mother who needed help. I rushed to get towels and guided them toward our old couch. While Emily wrapped Jacob in a towel, I hurried to make tea. As I waited for the water to boil, I could hear Jacob asking his mother if they were safe now, and Emily's soft response assuring him that they were. When I returned with steaming mugs, Emily began telling me what happened. She and Jacob had been driving back from visiting her sister in Austin when her Mercedes simply died on Highway 52. With no cell service and the storm worsening, she'd made the difficult decision to abandon the car and walk for help, carrying Jacob when his legs got too tired. "We walked for over an hour in that storm," she said, still shaking. Jacob was so scared, and honestly, so was I. When I finally saw your lights through the trees, I almost cried with relief. As I listened, I found myself seeing Emily Carter not as the powerful CEO, but as a mother, just like me, doing whatever it took to keep her child safe. The expensive business suit was gone, replaced by my old sweatshirt that was 3 sizes too big. Without her corporate armor, she looked younger, more real, more human. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, curiosity overcoming her fear. "Daddy? Who's here?" she called down softly. I introduced her to Emily and Jacob, watching as the children sized each other up with that particular shyness kids have when meeting someone new. But within minutes they were talking about cartoons and comparing favorite superheroes. I watched Lily take one of our extra blankets and wrap it around Jacob's shoulders without being asked. It was one of those moments that makes you realize your kid is turning out okay despite all your worries about failing as a parent. "She's beautiful," Emily said softly, watching Lily fuss over Jacob. "How old is she?" "7, I replied. "Just turned 7 last month." "Jacob just turned 8, Emily said, her voice carrying that weight of unspoken stories that all single parents recognize. "His birthday was last week. We had it at his favorite restaurant, just the 2 of us." In that moment, I realized that despite our vastly different circumstances, Emily and I had more in common than I ever would have imagined. We were both single parents, both trying to be everything our children needed. As the night wore on and the storm showed no signs of letting up, I found myself seeing Emily in a completely different light. She was funny, surprisingly down-to-earth, and easier to talk to than I'd expected. She helped me make sandwiches for the kids, and I was amazed to discover that this woman had no idea how to properly spread peanut butter on bread. "I usually have my assistant order lunch," she admitted with a laugh that was nothing like her polished corporate chuckle. "At home, Jacob and I live on takeout and frozen meals." Pretty pathetic, right? "Not pathetic," I said, showing her my grandmother's technique. "Just different life experiences." By midnight, it was clear the storm wouldn't let up soon. The Weather Service was calling it one of the worst storms to hit Central Texas in over a decade. I offered Emily and Jacob our guest room, which was just a converted office with a fold-out couch, but it was warm and dry. "I can't impose on you like this," Emily protested, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "You're not imposing," I said firmly. "No one should be out in weather like this, especially with a child. You'll stay here tonight, and we'll figure everything else out in the morning." As I made up the couch with our best sheets, I couldn't stop thinking about how surreal this was. 8 hours ago, Emily Carter was just a name on my pay stub. Now she was sleeping in my guest room, wearing my clothes, and her son was settled down next to my daughter like they were old friends. Morning came slowly, with weak sunlight filtering through my blinds and the distant sound of chainsaws as the town began cleanup. Our street looked like a war zone with branches and debris everywhere, power lines down, and Mrs. Patterson's big oak tree blocking half the street. I started coffee and heard soft footsteps on the stairs. Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing my clothes, her hair still damp from a shower. Without makeup she looked younger than her 38 years. "Sleep okay?" I asked, pouring her coffee. "Better than I have in months," she said. "There's something about this house, it feels safe. Peaceful. Like a real home." She looked around my modest kitchen. "Do you know what my house looks like, David? It's 6,000 square feet of marble and granite and custom everything, and it echoes. Jacob and I rattle around in it like marbles in a shoebox." Both children came tumbling down the stairs, already chattering like old friends. Breakfast became unexpectedly joyful. Emily helped in the kitchen, and we fell into an easy rhythm that felt natural and comfortable. After breakfast, I called about Emily's car. The news wasn't good. The storm had caused so much damage that it would be at least 2 days before they could get to her Mercedes. Trees were down across most roads, and every tow truck was committed to emergency calls. "Look," I said before she could apologize, "you and Jacob are welcome to stay as long as you need to. Lily clearly loves having another kid around, and honestly, it's nice to have some adult company." What I didn't say was that I was already dreading when they would leave. In less than 24 hours, Emily and Jacob had made my small house feel more complete, more alive. The next day passed in a blur of small domestic moments I knew I'd remember forever. Emily helped me fix a leaky faucet, and I was amazed that this CEO actually knew how to use a wrench. Jacob taught Lily chess, and they spent hours absorbed in their game. When the power went out again, we made it an adventure. We lit candles, told ghost stories, and played board games by candlelight. Emily seemed to relax completely. "I haven't played a board game in 20 years, she said as we played Monopoly. "I'd forgotten how they force you to just be present instead of thinking about the next meeting." "Jacob doesn't have anyone to play games with at home?" I asked. "His father isn't in the picture," she said quietly. "He left when Jacob was 4. And I work so much that by the time I get home each night, Jacob's usually already asleep. I tell myself it's all for him, but sometimes I wonder if what he really needs is just more of me." I understood that guilt completely. How many nights had I worked overtime, telling myself it was for Lily's future? How many bedtime stories had I missed? That night, after the children were asleep, Emily and I talked at my kitchen table until almost 2 in the morning. I learned that Emily had started as an entry-level accountant and worked her way up through 80-hour work weeks. I told her about my dreams of opening my own repair shop someday, dreams I'd never shared with anyone except Lily. "You should do it," Emily said enthusiastically. "You have the skills, and you're good with people. That's half the battle." "Easy for you to say," I laughed. "You have resources that make dreams possible." I have a mortgage and a 7-year-old who needs new shoes every 6 months. Emily was quiet, stirring her tea. Money doesn't make dreams possible, David. It just makes them easier. I've seen people with all the money in the world who never take the leap because they're afraid to fail. She looked at me directly. You strike me as someone who's not afraid of hard work. Finally, Emily's car was repaired. As I loaded her bags into my truck to drive them to the garage, I tried to think of something meaningful to say about what had happened between us. Thank you, Emily said as we stood beside her Mercedes. Not just for letting us stay, but for reminding me who I used to be before I became so consumed with success that I forgot what success was supposed to look like. Thank you, I replied, for reminding me that there's more to life than just getting by from day to day. She kissed my cheek, and then she and Jacob were gone, leaving me with the strangest mixture of gratitude and loss I'd ever experienced. But this story doesn't end there. A week later, I was at work when my supervisor told me I had an important call. It was Emily's voice, and she had a proposition that would change everything. David? I've been thinking about our conversation regarding your repair shop dream, and I have something I'd like to discuss. Emily explained that Carter Industries was looking to outsource equipment maintenance to local contractors. She wanted to offer me the opportunity to start my own business with a guaranteed contract that would provide steady income while I built up other clients. I'm not offering this because of personal feelings, she said quickly. I'm offering it because you're skilled, reliable, and I think you could build something great. I was speechless. This wasn't charity, it was opportunity. Emily, what's really going on here? I asked. Can I be honest with you, David? Those days at your house were the happiest I've been in years. For the first time in a long time, I remembered what it felt like to be part of a real family. She explained that she'd been thinking since returning to her regular life. She'd started leaving the office at 5 to have dinner with Jacob. She'd cleared her weekends of work calls. She'd hired a general manager so she could focus on being a mother. The storm didn't just strand me at your house, she said. It showed me that the life I'd been living wasn't really living at all. Over the following months, Emily and I maintained a friendship that was both professional and personal. Our kids had playdates, we had family dinners, and slowly, carefully, we built something deeper than the crisis that had brought us together. My business grew steadily. Within a year, I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed possible and doing work I loved. Emily transformed from the driven executive who'd knocked on my door into someone who'd learned to find success in smaller, more personal moments. One evening, almost exactly a year after the storm, Emily and I were sitting on my front porch again, watching Lily and Jacob catch fireflies. The easy companionship between us had deepened into something real and valuable. Do you ever think about that night? Emily asked. About how everything changed because of a broken-down car and a thunderstorm. Every day, I admitted. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you'd knocked on someone else's door. Emily smiled, that genuine smile I'd come to treasure. I don't think it was random, David. I think sometimes life puts us exactly where we need to be, even if we don't realize it at the time. As I sat there listening to my daughter's laughter mixing with Jacob's, watching Emily's face in the soft glow of the porch light, I had to agree. The storm had taken down trees and knocked out power, but it had also torn down walls I didn't even know I'd built around my heart, and shown me that sometimes the most profound changes come from the simple act of opening your door to someone who needs shelter from life's storms.